You cut everything I say
No.
out, just so you know.
Well, I mean, it seems like in the 90s, the early 90s, what was the underground at the time was sort of brought into the mainstream because of its vitality and because it was totally real and because it was independent of any sort of big business or corporation. It all remained like pretty real and there was just this beautiful integrity to everything. It was people weren't really doing it for career reasons. They were just doing it because it was fucking fun and they could do it by themselves, you know. And you know, and then that cycle sort of wound itself out and things started getting homogenized and bottlenecked into that one little tube of shit. It's just fucking, and you just kind of got that same thing. But I feel like now, with newer technology and the internet and people having access to pretty much anything, that independent spirit is back because people don't. There's no one giving them any set of rules, you know. There's no one telling them how to do what they want to do. Or in the '80s, we would, in the punk rock scene, we all had fanzines, and we'd go around and interview our favorite bands, and then we'd go take crappy pictures with our little cameras at their shows, and then we'd go to Kinko's and we'd Xerox them into a little layout and make 100 copies and go to the next punk rock show and sell them for 25 cents, you know. And within that, you'd have P.O. box addresses of your favorite bands, and it just kind of added to this network, this community that people would communicate like that. And I feel like it's the same thing now, just with like a blog or a website, and anybody who has access to a computer can do that, you know, and it can reach the entire world. It's fucking exciting, you know.
It is exciting, but do you ever feel like there's just too much noise out there that everybody thinks that their opinion matters so much?
Yeah, I mean, I know people get really upset about how opinionated people get and this faceless, anonymous voice that is the internet, you know. And when the internet really started blowing up, I thought, God, this is like a fucking bathroom wall. You could go right in like, Jenny sucks dick and she's a slut. Here's her phone number. And that's what it seemed like to me. Like, is this a waste of time? I don't really know. And, but I guess in a way it's sort of nice, like, to have a voice. It doesn't matter what you say. You know, it's nice to feel like someone's listening because there's someone listening. We made a video for a song called Best of You, and Mark Pellington directed it. And in the video, there was writing on these hallways and rooms that we were walking through and performing in. And he went to this website that was, I don't remember what it was, but it was like this confessional website that you could go to and anonymously just confess your sins, you know, bad things that you've done. And some of the things were just so incredibly horrible, you know, and heartbreaking. But the fact that there was some way to do that without, you know, sitting in a closet at church, that you could just say it and know that someone will hear it. And it was pretty awesome. I mean, some of the things were like, I wish Paris Hilton would get fat and die, and it was like stupid shit like that. But then there were things, you know, that were really valid. And
how do you think that you guys have managed to sustain such a big following, such a big base?
You know, with the Foo Fighters, we have this really beautiful disregard for anything outside of our little bubble that we live in. We just function within our own little world, and we have the same organization that we've had for like 20 years. You know, there's only been one manager. There's only been one accountant. There's only been one monitor guy. You know, and so we kind of keep it tight like that, and in doing that, it never becomes any more complicated than it should be, because we're sort of like a family. And we have our own studio, and we make records there. If we don't make them there, we make them in my garage. We don't use computers, we use tape machines. When we go on tour, we hit the road just as we've always done, and you know, our focus isn't like world domination, we have to be the best and biggest band in the world. We just want to do it because we love doing it, and each other, you know? So it's a little different than the way a lot of other bands work, because the most important thing to us really isn't like how many albums you've sold or chart position. You know, the most important thing to me is that there's people there to fucking get down when we play, and whether it's 800 or 80,000 people, you know, that's the most important thing to me. And I think we've just kept that intention or that focus that simple, and we don't expect much, you know.
Whatever you're doing, right.
It seems to work.
So you have a new record coming out?
We do, yeah. We have a record coming out in the spring. We recorded this album in my garage with a producer named Butch Vig, who made the Nirvana record Nevermind like 20 years ago. And when I was young, I grew up in the East Coast and I played in punk rock bands. And I joined Nirvana just through friends. They said they needed a drummer, and I didn't know them, and I joined the band, and you know, we drove around in a crappy little van, and I lived on Kurt's couch, and we sold equipment for food, and just like any other band I'd been in. And then we came down to Los Angeles and made that record Nevermind with Butch. And no one really thought anything was going to happen with it. We just thought like, wow, this, you know, make sure it's good, because we're on a big record company label now, and we've got 2.5 weeks to record this stuff, and we've been practicing every day. And we were just so young that it was really earnest, you know. We were like, is that good? You know, are we good? Are we good? Is it going to be okay? And our friends would hear some of the stuff and say, you guys are going to be like the biggest fucking band in the world. And we're like, what are you talking about? There's no way. I mean, we were still playing places that held 90 people, you know. And that album just kind of blew up and changed all of our lives forever. And
what did that ultimately go on to sell?
What did it weigh?
How many copies did that ultimately go on to sell?
I don't even know, dude. Millions of records. I don't know.
Amazing.
A lot. And yeah, and so it changed everybody's lives forever, you know.
And were other bands in the Seattle scene, were they thankful to you for sort of opening that up?
Well, I think, you know, it seems like with bands and music and kids and fans and people, that the great thing about music is that it should sort of like open you up a little bit. When you hear a song that makes you feel a certain way, maybe it makes you feel different than you've ever felt before. All of those things sort of open doors, and it's the same thing with bands. You know, Nirvana wouldn't have happened without Husker Du, or the Pixies, or Sonic Youth, or all of our heroes, Black Flag, or fucking ABBA, or the Beatles, or whatever, you know. Little Richard, it's like, everyone just sort of builds the next rung for the next person, and that's the evolution of music, you know. And so we would go back to Seattle, and it was really weird. Like all of our friends were just as amazed as we were. Like, oh my God, the album's #1, you know. And it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. It's like, this is the biggest scam ever. People are buying this scam, you know. And so it was funny, and we were so young, you know. We were kids. It was crazy.
What was the biggest audience in Nirvana ever played?
I think the biggest audience Nirvana ever played to was in Brazil, where we went down and played a soccer stadium that held like 100,000 people or something. It was just so massively huge. It was like an illusion. It didn't make sense at all. And we kind of intentionally fucked that shit up. So I think it was in Rio, and we attempted to play Rio by Duran Duran, thinking it was funny, and you've got 100,000 people there like, this isn't Guns N' Roses, what the fuck is this, you know? And, you know, and then the next day the review was like, Nirvana jam session, brilliant! And it was like, crap, it sucked, it was the worst show we've ever played. But, yeah. I mean, from the time that record came out and the Teen Spirit video was on MTV, honestly, it started like where we were playing a place that held 90 people, and then that night, Kurt and I in the hotel room, and we turn on TV and we see the videos. We're calling everybody in their rooms, dude, you fucking turn on MTV right now. We're on TV, you know? And then, yeah.
It's amazing.
It's pretty crazy. But making this new Foo Fighters record with Butch was a trip because I hadn't been in the studio with him since 1991. And we've remained friends over the years. You know, he's a super famous producer now. He did the latest Green Day record. He's worked on everyone from, he's in that band Garbage, and he's a brilliant dude. And he hasn't changed at all. You know, he's the same guy. He wears fancy cologne now, but he's still the same dude. And, but I just thought, you know, for this album, I really wanted the experience to come through in the music, which, in making records, the environment or your atmosphere that you're in, it should kind of determine what the album turns out to be, you know? There are a lot of classic, famous records that sound the way they do because of the way they were made, you know? Bowie in Berlin, or, you know, or the Foo Fighters in our garage. And so I just thought, okay, check it out. We're gonna do it this way. We're gonna do it in my garage to tape. No digital stuff at all. I don't want to see any computers, just tape, the way we used to do it with Butch. And surrounded by, like, my kids running around my feet, and just real loose, you know? There's no clock on the wall. It's not a studio, it's my fucking garage. I had to back the minivan out, put the drum set in, you know? And it was really cool for me because I had Chris Novoselic, the bass player of Nirvana, come down and play on a song too. And it was the first time that Chris and Butch and I had been in the studio together since 1991. And it really became more of a personal experience than just like, let's make a CD so we could press a bunch and sell them and then go sell tickets and t-shirts. And it was like, it was all happening for really simple, just, you know, human reasons. Like, man, I want to hang out with Chris and Butch together again. That'd be really fun. I want to do it in the garage because, shit, you know, we're at the point in our career where we're just like selling out stadiums over in Europe, and so the garage is the last place anyone wants to fucking see us make a record. So let's do it. And I don't want to use any computers. That's what everybody else does. Let's do this. And it was just, it really came through in the music because there's this excitement. There's this life to it, I think, because it was a challenge, and it was just not your typical album making process, which I think is why we'll be around for another 10 years, because we haven't painted ourselves into that corner yet, you know.
Do you have a name for the record yet?
I do, but I'm not going to tell you.
Come on, man. Come on.
I can't do it.
Is it good?
I think it's a good title. It is now.
That was awesome, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was
thanks.
really great.